Namo Buddhaya. Namo Dharamaya. Namo Sanghaya. Namo Guruvaya. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Dharamaya. Namo Sanghaya. Namo Guruvaya. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Dharamaya. Namo Sanghaya. Kande lai je guen je do gane. Ra guai sho sa bon de cho zi zi. She je je guen je lo san cha. Se da je ba.
我的米的那个街上吃完了，正把出去不送所求呢，这些的要听的嘞。上界学到上界上那上就发的大给，大给学学学个上界，上界学上界上界学到上界上那，上就发的大呢，就是大给学经学别是。着了并且上街着吧小上街小了发街上了上就把这大呢也是一街别上了街着了并且上街着吧小好了但是现在他街都他就让那么样的我做了上街我们不记那个到吧提起的特别学生你们各种小肉是没得这么尊敬谁的谁不是
I would like to remind each one of us to take a moment and cultivate bodhicitta motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. And with that kind of motivation, we should all participate in this Lamrim teaching on the stages of the path leading to enlightenment. There are about, I think, 4 folios in Tibetan to complete this section on bodhicitta, and let me read them to give you the blessing of oral transmission.
Gule de la nive ni ga wa ni gu la sha ji bi ang ge chung dang de sha dang wa de mo ga re ga sha da dang zha lo ju ne yang de me gen de ye ba dong ba dang yo ni wa rang ge be ni ba yung ni ba yung ba de yung ba ni be rang ge be ni ba thap ji be me ma ba ji ba u ka be she hi ka ji ya dong ba yin de sin je ba yin no zhou wa sha wa ni de la so ka wa xie ge jie xie re yung xi xi de du du ma wa bu ma de ji na rang ge ken lo bo so yi xie ba jie la zhen yu go wa men zhong wa ka ji ni be yin de sin je da ji sha wa ni de la yu ji me wa la ga be be sang ba ne ba wa de be sang ba chang ba ne ba wa de那些些别人不个是主要是别个预计上是他觉得上完了到不等这边对些别这，原来是不是特别多上完到这些这这边得到给同年节我不说些这就个月的给完着提这些吧。都讲别的没把赛道嘛，这边上什么当着了我些当完你把我写写，我没别赛的那上什么了嘛这不嘛你，从那老对那边看啥来的，别弄就是送把他这没有送，这边上什么看呢？有没些把我送这边学把他的什么苦滚了，当别这些这。唐那这样的这玩意儿，用的这把样你用的这玩意儿，你不能老外偏把搞了怕引起，小学的时候你们嘛就那你把这就话嘛用的你脑子不随便你不，搞这些别人让给没把这些别是不是弄的了小娃你这个的把这没就把这做别想就就把我的。让我你们对家的家这个这边对家的老板上班的马街那么你们这帮买，这帮你们些人的那去你不帮的现的我他这他这都不把你看他们那。就那现在没得就把怎么些这边些的一的这边一没得这边就些的没这边些了。생기에 쉬어보발래 저와 고대에 청주 메로나 스멘테네 도민지로나 도르민지로나 마니제 메지에 저와 공기에 저가 제보 총동 총무 총지를 넘어서 공뒤에 네비 공뒤에 네비越那么说长久了，那个杨大这边的事情到这没有些说这个先用耳机装把我当我差不多的是那我帮把那先基本上我到那一个现在都能摸弄到我家边新过里边说不到，工作店里边只能在这上去也叫我当我给我这些去我那上去什么东西呢？叫我现在什么不晓得，我妈这玩意儿现在忙着每个都没得那些，说这个说话等都把什么年龄一些的年龄些的这做了，我那不学的我是不是旅不我的对吧？俺，也上这边这把明年我那边什么人多吧，等我除了村子的，那我们说当了村子这边那的100年的年吧，民就是行。连这个连把它烧你老吧，娘把我怎么就别东西凶，就东西凶那没什么为凶小个凶了。你们就怎么了？你们说个我家里没有个，爸下边说些忙不给这个不得了，你上几位这把没你说娘那么身份几位想得了吧的，我等。那东村子了，那对你村子了吧？对你们个吧，那么咱就没得多。那不是现在的那个不是的，你们这是生计东面居民节。生计的是的没居民节，交钱的是叫我对面这边居民的居民的。这次呢，就因为菜的是我把面的把老多的，等你交钱了，钱多的，这个些为老百姓说些送的，这个些为我送去学完了，这个些我多年给同样的人的，我说上去是为学现在的为叫我的这睫毛刀的为上去是。 我的些的小心我了就把的把的嘛都是结巴的，没就是我些这个一些各就些告诉我说，那就些告诉我去的就的些三个没讲，前面的些把这些说文章那菜的这样那个就那么的那么什节最凶的多就是他们。上升节到这些些个这现在资源中心没我样，到个深圳了，有中心基本上升了，接到我给你们中心这我的些基本给这些我了，就我中心这我呢，基本没把推出的那么上升节到把东就的，这那个么说到么说到了么什么到那么到不到像啥等了的那个来说没去了。这那我自动对效果能这的，看你讲我嘛这边学了些，我听着在我你我或者这边学我里边点不了那，天你多的多点没把什么流那些嘞，大个节把它点了我怕我先别，得让我们得让我们学多什么里边不完。先前接了面的先前得怎么些多大个面的是娘呢，娘的绿帮呢呢，木是当你都晒了。先前去找把我们每个你们地同就那样没有娘别什么见了呢，也这些个呢，我说不接我到了先前一弄着，他这边就写了这边什么些吧，我接的。他们呢，先前你把这什么东西把说，他们些讨论些，他们呢就从这边什么些吧，讲个小区什么我说。做不叫就是过说我这个生计这边老在的老中这把呢，结果人家不这边到路这边到他们都不会的小老都在那个的小说了说，路他这边就看这个这边都不叫到这边了小把你就这些些把那么说些些的，那里你们到里头什么，他就是收上人的些的，那里说龙别老不叫我进要把我些。多现在你老板的到这到我些多客气呢，讲究老这这个什么些把这些把学就是说是我些会，老板我这他给老的多年叫送别让给老么看老没看那个路上这些。大概老么送这些这个这他们这讲多把这个都不弄。这把的给些他妈的这边新年这不能学这不是没这了，老是就把那学这把些这个那个是必须是对我讲我们，差不多我不让我这边这把说吧，对吧？些个这呢商业说别把那么的老是这那把学呢，也说当都比。求这吧了，对吧？些个这吧了吧，送走了些那边些吧没人忙的，些个那边这个说都别挪当挪我把我送个那些个兄弟当里边些吧嘛那，那个叫我嘛的话，那我搞现当人人对吧？唱的些都地那这我这些吧。那那呢，一天没那的，什节吧？我些吧，就是问题吧，那这来些了呢？江州那几天的，刚那个学姐，那我就是什么怎么的，小班没西边没得了。没什么讲吧，那我现在呢，的那这了，到底什么？他们这到我学吧，那学吧，我们这那我美国的，现在那我东北那这那个钱我就没学。我这些边那这你嘛都别那这这呢，南中的什么节把小个些在这小个在这赢了，去那边到来老把这什么呢，我些牛啊，他们那边是我些牛啊，那边小个些什么，生节国节那家没那样嘛，这说的到那让个路呢，没事没动的，生节里没动没多别。那不那么他们给他们上次他们面对呗，主要是他们面对呗，跑肚就上升，上跑肚上升节，往对些呗，东方面讲，旁边叫啊，开朗呗，那家的给我也给我也呗，你这都觉呗，都是啥不少，上有他们到呢，你们那边那家当给我呗，东就呗，东些什么都是些不少呗。 Gyeltsen jiwe la je nang du jiwe tili hin de me do bong jang lin zhu ji ba ni mon be lao ja tu mu men ba wo ta gan de hin zung de ge de ga je na bu shi ji na ge sun ba de ya shang sim le ni nga ba men bu je ba se de ge de da de ju de ye ba ka sen til hin go ta na mi ye wa ke ya she ene ge de ka du ko rang ene hin ko go se ya de so de san da be na lo chu gan ya tong to ya ina ene da de de shang sim ji chue sen na lo chu de be cho lan zhu yang jiu lo chu so sa go go sa de de hin ko go go si我就是我的
Accelerate from page 77 in volume number 2 in the English translation of Lamrim Chenmo to page 84. On page 77, those of you who have the text, the third, what we call the dark practice that can weaken your bodhicitta. The Tibetan word is called nakwe chöshi. Literally means the 4 negative phenomena. And I might like to translate it more as the 4 negative actions. If you engage in those actions, these will diminish or weaken your spirit of enlightenment or bodhicitta. And the third one is called speaking disparagingly, etc., to beings who have correctly entered the Mahayana. And so here, in other words, if we speak disparagingly about the bodhisattvas, so then the ripening effect of such action, we call namin in Tibetan, is we will be reborn into hell or nyalwa. But there are other effects as well. So one of the things that Geshe talked about is, let's say, you are going to achieve path of seeing, darshan mark, tonglam in 6 years, let's say. Yeah? So you're on the path and track 6 years. But then you happen to speak such unkindly, disparagingly about the bodhisattva. So then that will really kind of, how should I say, pull you back another 6 years. It is as if the 6 years, right, it'll take double the time. So now you have to accumulate merit and wisdom for additional 6 years to be able to achieve the path of seeing. So that's how it's very detrimental to speak so unkindly about bodhisattva.
我觉得各个送的是，看着常住的现代人话就是现在老中头发过上去的人住是吧？哦，这是个，第一看着不哪怕他这个吧，他现在现在你们看着哪怕他这个干接续有嘛的，可是这呢，这嘛他我是不是呢？你可别的，看着被心里独家人生个我这些呢，你浪上干呢，你这想把些，这了看着见呢，这了呀。 可能杨就也村民一到搞没几不行，浪上怕搞他不行，我来是不是？
So what are the most negative, destructive, afflicting emotions that can really prolong our time to become enlightened being is anger, especially towards the bodhisattva. It's tremendously destructive attitude, if you will. And of course, we should do our best to prevent such negative emotion, anger, arising in our mind in relation to or towards the bodhisattva. So that's like step number 1. But step number 2, should we get upset or get angry with the bodhisattva, then we should be able to recognize it then and there and do everything to be able to stop it, right, from progressing or from continuing. And we should do confession practice, shakpa in Tibetan, right? We should really confess negativity. Don't entertain all kinds of what we call chunmin yije, inappropriate mental approach or application, meaning like, indulge in all kind of thought processes that only justify and support your anger towards the bodhisattva. Like, wow, really, I have a good reason why, this is the case. No, don't engage in the chunmin yije, inappropriate mental approach.
这现在干些呢？ 소소 줄가 요 계좌에서 봐 뉴로로 사바게 되게 대카와 셰니 인데 당가요 데 파세 사바 마체도 비슷해 사와 셰도시로 와 저도 티바시 붙이 사와 셰도 그랬어.
No, sir. So anger really not only destroys tremendous positive energy or merit, punya, geza, virtue that we have accumulated over a long period of time, but it can also be very detrimental in the sense for us to be able to actualize or internalize any realization that is forthcoming. So it's very detrimental. It's like a double, it's like a double whammies here, right? I mean, we lose all the merit we accumulated, and now we are going to get, stuck for too long to realize the next level. So therefore, we should be very vigilant about, anger arising in our mind towards a bodhisattva.
어디 다들 콘도 바까 해다가네 ene pege yabushi tona ene pege 담보게다 충중제제는 배 거랑사 마대신 제벌이야 로니 공부도 로니 ene 톱셴보레 오그레스 티리아 남전레와 미디쇼에 내면은 셈데 대다이데 해다 강질 리둥가마에 사본 표하지 저 로테다 공부죠는 강나 내세 남제거디 거기 저와도 배 겁나 애니 거 체제 말스고 깨지적 야 겁나 삼로를 찍당되던 애니 배 깨지 뭐배 당대지 깨지 뭐 공부도 주고 그랬어. 근데 총을 잡아 조직과 말았어. 총을 잡은다 소소 비 배동 찍지 총대 비 총대 찍 뭐도 중앙 총에 알레 뒤 편도고 말 봐. 네. 그래서 샘지 그들에 또 템바로 찍당서는 되게 유령 먹고 부자잖니 엔도 그랬어.
So we're on page 78. So we may create and accumulate, relatively speaking, a small merit or virtue. Okay? But if we learn not to get angry, okay, and prevent anger from arising in our mind, this small virtue, with passage of time, it multiplies and it can become a huge virtue, big virtue. And so that's an advantage to us. And the reason why that's the case is, as we have a quote from Pramana Vartika, a compendium of valid cognition on page 78, which basically states that the virtue state of mind, or the virtue that we accumulate, it can grow infinitely. And there's no limit to say, like, your virtue will grow up to this point, and then, there is no more growth, right? In the case of physical reality, the example Geshe has given is, let's say we are training our body to be able to jump, right, to the furthest point we can. So we can train and train and train. We can get better and better. And at a certain point, there is a limit. However hard you train, your body is not capable of jumping to the infinite limit. It just will get stuck somewhere. But that's not the case with our mental virtue. There is no limit. There is no upper limit where it will stop here, like, okay, now you have reached the plateau, right? Now this is it. No, it can enhance infinitely. And so the quote from Valid Cognition substantiates that point. The more we familiarize our minds with, develop intimacy with virtue, it enhances to the infinitude. Okay.
가르산디다 남제가 가지고 있다. 닝제 공부때네 애들 상제에 채우도 닝제 탐이 배워야 말이 이거 그 총바당 쉬쉬나 그래서 총바대 가지 총도는 박제 되는 총도 말았어. 간절지 가지 장나 박제 되는 총도 말했어. 슈드 가지 구해나 코마 감도 그런 미시네. 야페 타 매우시리 야물 감도 그랬어. 나도 근데 셈다 뒤인다고 말했어. 땡땡 배송 짜말 미소 시도와 땡땡 바시데상 다 테레 슈드레 슈드 땡땡 바마이스 다 땡땡 슈드레와 슈드 가세 그는 땡바 조에도 용루 뭐 야페야 말와 어쩌죠 그 가세 조에도 가세 셴나 슈드 감도 그러와 어디 땡땡 바마이라고 다 총바디 있는 땡땡 말에 디시나 배송 짜말도 그래 총대레레 배송레레 쇼고 왔어 근데 또 생기 표하듯이 전 근데 그우제 그 계시 뭘 패도 그러면 총관은 이게 좋아래 군대를 좋아래 저거 말했어.
No, sir.
어디서고.
No.
다 누구도 남대가 돼야 돼.
Yes. So what's actually stated in that passage quoted from Pramana Vartika or Compendium of Valid Cognition, Samanamjal, in Tibetan, as explained by Geshe, is this. Because some critics say that training our mind to develop compassion, nyingje, is similar to training our body to be able to jump, right, to a certain distance, or it is like boiling water. Yeah, there's a certain limit. That's what the critics say. And the response to that critic is, no, compassion is unlike training our body for a jump or boiling of water, with the heat. And what's the difference? As explained, that in the case of training our body for jumping, we have to, every jump, we have to make this tremendous effort to be able to go further. At a certain point, there's a limit. You cannot cross that limit. That's the nature of physical reality. There is a limit. So that means the effort you make, which can support your jumping, jumping a certain distance to some extent, and beyond that, the supporting and supported relationship between the two fails. It cannot do it anymore. Okay. Now, in the case of boiling water, you can start with a fire, heat, and you can boil the water, right? If you just keep on boiling the water, at a certain point, it'll dry up, So that supported relationship doesn't exist beyond certain point. Like you think, okay, the heat is helping to boil the water. Just keep on heating it up. Like at some point, your pot will be burnt, It just, But in the case of mind and the compassion, the support and support, it's not like that. That as you develop compassion, okay, that at certain point, even if you don't make any effort, your compassion increases, by itself. Of course, every effort you make to cultivate compassion, it supports it. It's not such thing like at a certain point, well, now your effort cannot be of any use. Compassion is stuck. No. It's not the case. That is something to do with the mental reality, right? You develop compassion, it can enhance infinitely, unlike those dealing with physical realities.
This is that 축구위나 그때 때마시 슈트 때에 되어와. 세다 그때 가서 펜에 때인데 냠르고도와. 어디 그 때만 말라고로. 다 샘디 닝제 때마시 샘디 때샤고로와. 닝제 가서 겁나라. 샘 야야도 그러면 닝제 근데 샘 두르고 말와. 그래서 거기 뺏어오면 돼와.
So in case of the relationship between the water and the heat, right, supporting relationship, you put the water on the heat, it started to boil, but if you keep on doing it, at a certain point, the water is going to dry up, right? So then there won't be any more supporting and supported relationship between ten tempa delva, between the water and the heat. Okay? But that's not the same with compassion in our mind. The more we cultivate compassion, right, the more positive our mind becomes. It's not such things like, as you grow in compassion, then your mind at a certain point is beginning to go crazy and go negative, like, oh, I don't like this one, It's not such thing. The more compassion grows in your mind, right, to that extent, your mind becomes more positive. Yeah? And there's no such thing as drying up your mind at a certain point, Close.
너주 시바들이야. 학습은 여기 시바 생겨라. 어디 여기서 학습해야 돼. 다 니가 학습해야 돼. 양배건지 성주 심보시 디게저레면도. 학습세나 심바 청고도 학습세고. 간다 심 정사 뭐 이거 랑지베 심들 학습. 어쨌다 다 학습 멤버스들 랑지 마시 텔야 꿀음 레니 그게 다 밀 고고서는 다 학습 많이 버리고 봐. 어디 요시 해야 돼. 어디 학습 해야 돼. 셈랑 시바시. 사니 무고 말레게시. 어디 뭐 달레네. 인데 대상을 여기 시야도 관심은 거야. 탑지도 가대듯이 요지 가대시는 데라 학습 여기 시와. 셈 좀 필사로 와. 어디. 너지 시바디.
Then the fourth what they call dark practice or the negative action, Nakche Shiba, the four negative phenomenon, if you will. At the end of page 79, reads here, causing the living beings that you are helping. Wait a minute, am I reading on the wrong pages? Yes, I'm reading on the wrong page. Here, sorry, page 78, bottom. In the absence of sincerity, the Tibetan word is laksam. Using deceit and misrepresentation to get the service of others. So that's the fourth negative action that can weaken and diminish our spirit of enlightenment or bodhicitta. The Tibetan word laksam, translated here as sincerity, is being honest, like being genuine, like being truthful. Okay? Whereas laksam mayimba, insincerity, is then being deceitful, being manipulative, being deceptive, being cheating, all of that, right? So the negativity side is, lacking sincerity or being insincere. Insincere in any forms you said, being deceptive, being manipulative, being secretive, and all of that, right?
지당적 로로시나 인의 대상까지 다 민고고야 내가 가르치나 다 여기서 건서 다 소로시는 뒤리고다 다 십자적 그냥 세기 지당적시는 요도 가가샤고도 근데 다 뉴스야 되레스 소소 연대매 발이야 연대 연도들 다 소소도 야지 빠야죠라 될 뉴스게레스 다 소소 좀봐 까 미좀 통로시 될 바까니 좀도 명고시야죠 말에 어때래 될야 되니 karsa tisego yo segoro di segido de chama de sangbal ngema enen jongashi bode ya temde kanta kare temde go slades en ba geba ji jonga te ya da sangbeja ha고 ma 자 제 땅이 하고 미 몰라게 nga sangba yin sangba chen bo yin si en kesa heda fa chen ka ya ro o ti sor
al lu jonga tim dim ko sangba tin skoro ge
la
jonga tim se di sangba
jonga tim se da ngo pe jonga da me chi de jonga da ti ke ba tong de de ji de jonga tim ya ro tim ya ri ba ka ri ji ge ti re si en ko tim ya ri ba ha gu me sa ro che de nga sangba yin sangba chen bo si da ti le ba ji ke sa heda she ba ka ya ro de li ji ho da
So in a generic sense, when we say being insincere, we can be being insincere about anything. One of the examples given here is in a business, right, doing business. When you use any kind of measurement, you use the false measurement, right, to be able to deceive and cheat others, right? So you give them the less thing, So that's the part. But if you go more into the depth, so to speak, this is where translators always find difficulty, I think, maybe me as a translator, maybe not others. To translate this Tibetan word called yoju, which in Tibetan seems very easy, it seems like a true thing. You is sort of being deceptive in the sense that if you have any weakness or limitations, you don't want others to see it, so you cover it up, right? So it's like, I don't know, what's the modern language today? Is this the image formation? You project that nice image, but inside you got a lot of weakness and limitation, isn't it? So it's being deceptive in that sense. That's called yo in Tibetan, covering up one's limitation, weaknesses, negativities, all of that. Ju, the Tibetan word, it's hard to translate, but I might say it's like pretentious. You don't have any realization on qualities, but you pretend that you have one. Right? Well, I know quite a bit about, right, whatever, but you really don't know a thing about it. So that's what the Tibetan word yoju means, right? So probably we need to use two words here, like being deceptive and being pretentious, And so once, the classic story is, I think somebody asked Brahma, right, Sangpa, about the dissolution process of the body elements, right? Or like she said, in the Buddhist cosmology, we said when we die, our death processes involve how the elements in our body, water and all the liquid, they dissolve into one another, and that's how everything dries up, and then you're going to be dead. Okay. Or when the world comes to an end, then there's elemental dissolution as well, right? So somebody asked Brahma about that. Okay, could he explain that? So Brahma didn't know the answer, so he was being deceptive. So his answer was, you know what? I'm Brahma, not Sangbao, right? And Brahma is great, you know. So basically, his rhetorical answer, right? So it's like, I'm a Brahma, and Brahma is great. Then I should know the answer. Why do I need to give you the answer, right? But he just kind of give you that deceptive response, you know.
어때 다 나중에 조사 다 가지고 실에 당부 가지고 당부도 들어서 유대 가지고 유대라 심지어 탐지샤 다 심지어 탐지샤는 다 저와도 가르쳐 심지어 수이나 아니 소가 싫으면 그게 회계 처리한 아니 준자는 미모 참볼라야 돼 아니 다 라마도 캠보도 요구 와서 어떻게 이해를 와 타는 가샤 다 타는 심지어 간가 가샤는 라마 캠볼 야래 통 말아 어디래
So we are on page 79 and the caption reads in a bold print, the training in the precept to adopt the 4 light practices. The Tibetan word is karchuishi, 4 what we call the positive phenomena, or I would like to say 4 positive actions, which keep the spirit of enlightenment from weakening. So in other words, these 4 positive actions will, how should I say, help us not to experience a degeneration of bodhicitta. So what are they? The first one is called forsaking consciously. Well, I'm reading it here, right? Then I'll translate the explanation given. Forsaking consciously lying to any living being whatsoever, even in jest or even for the sake of your life, unquote. So the first positive phenomenon or positive action, karche, is not to lie to any sentient being, even for the sake of just goofing around or for fun or whatever the case may be. Okay, and so that's important. If we could do that, if we can learn not to lie to any sentient being, then that's become a great antidote, especially to not to lie to our gurus and abbots, right, the higher beings. If we can stop it from at a very ground level, not to lie to anybody, then we are not going to lie to our gurus and preceptors and the abbots and all of those things, right? All the higher beings.
대단한 거는 도와가서 되어와 강제 조조다 경우로는 밤라 주든샤 인텔 경험을 저디서 인 야등업 이상업 지사정여로 와 어디에 가 제야 될 거서 이제 되는 아메 체념 신사다 세려야 라와유나 아니 제 그런 리그 말아 봐 라면 더고 힘도 이제 다니에서 기운 거로 와 제가 단데 동화 작아지고 표는 아니 갈래가 지금 니얼려온 거지 좀 라와도 되게 가게는 너도 봐라 다 되지 봐더라도
So the example Geshe gives is in the Vinaya monastic disciplined discourse, how the fully ordained monks have so many vows to keep. And when we look in terms of the fundamental vows and some of the secondary important ones, there are not that many. But there's too many other vows attached to it. So if a monastic is very careful to observe all the minor vows, if you will, then he is not going to break, right? There is no risk for him to breaking the major vows because he's so careful to every details, isn't it? But if somebody is a little bit relaxed, like, okay, this is just a little teeny weeny thing, so just keep them habit, like, then slowly, your habit will catch up with you, like, okay, maybe these secondary vows are not a big deal, and then you will break the root vows as well, So that's why if we prevent it from a very basic level, so to say, don't lie to anybody, well, that will include even the higher beings as well, isn't it? Okay.
다 거저 이바 들으자. 거저 이바 심지 탐지시. 다 심지 유지들이야. 심지 술이나 강제 될이야. 소소 삼바베 니모 레바 좀 짜니 매바 창고 장샤 내바 삼바. 사장 소리도 짜니 매바 창고 내바 될. 이 거저 히바디. 거저 히바디 다다다 나우주 히베 가자디 나우주 그거래.
캔 쇼긴 니바 들어가 캔 갈치.
거저 니바 들다. 더 나우주 수면이 버려도 되래자. 수면이 버리 나 되래도 심지어 담지 내가 거저 히베니 뭐 알아 되죠. 여기 매매 다스 사서 매매 여기 시와서 까지 시베니 모래도와 그래서 나우지 시베니 뭐 까지 니바데 나우지 시베니 모래도와 어디래서 사서 매매 여기 시와서 시와 어디지 모래다 그 정보상에 있는 거 여기 시야요 말와 어디래서
And so we are in the middle of page 79. And the second positive phenomenon or positive action, Karcha Shiva, is translated as not deceiving but remaining sincere to all living beings. So according to the explanation, if we learn to be sincere to sentient beings, because all sentient beings are like our objects of reference, the sincerity here means that we should not discriminate among sentient beings, right? We should treat them all equally, being sincere. And so that practice or the action becomes an antidote to counteract the fourth negative phenomenon or the dark practice, which is not being sincere to sentient beings, isn't it? So at the bottom of page 78 is the fourth dark practice of the negative action. And the second positive action or the light practice, they call it here, is the antidote to the fourth negative practice.
다 가지고 숨어들 가지고 숨에 상승 탐지 다들 저와는 동반들 뒤에서 에는 제대 대다게 돈에게서 나가 쇼힐 줘봐서 다 가지고 나주 숨어들어 상승을야 나가 많이 줘봐 사야들와 다 뒤에는 상승을 에는 배 동배 뒤에야 에는 용대 나가 가서 가고 kanji uwe peke teo nga ashe tideshi ini karza nga pa majo na takta nyimu chukura
And then the third positive phenomenon or the light practice or positive action is called developing the idea that all bodhisattvas are the teachers. Now if we develop that kind of a recognition that all bodhisattvas are as if our teachers, and this becomes an antidote to counteract the third negative phenomenon or the dark practice on page 77, right at the top, speaking disparagingly to beings who have correctly entered the Mahayana. And so if we learn to regard all bodhisattvas as if they are our teachers, and we learn to appreciate them, we learn to emulate them, praise them, then it becomes an antidote to the third negative practice.
마 데브야 슈그다 다 뭔고 연구도 왔어. 어때 용야 그래서는 상선도 양도 인 컨트롤 값 지인다다 안티 쉐브리스다. 컨트롤 소다 이 상선 예된다 그 레가서 다셔다와. 어디서 다디 될 디스고자 그래서 페다메 바세다 데려다 가지고 소도 칸도시나 되게 최신나 되게 가르자 나타나 되게 최연이나 가지 개와 가르시나 그게 근데 녀야 저 쪽쪽도 매와 가물이 쩌러 누구든 페다메들이더라. 딱 야시리 다니 배 칸도시나 쪼스 최연이나 쪼스지로 유네 야페 용거로.
So we are all trying to do something positive, virtue, kyewache. But we may experience that we don't see plentiful indicators that we are really progressing much in our virtue, doing the positive thing. On the other hand, we probably start to see more indicative signs that our practice is not growing much, isn't it? Our virtue is really not thriving. It's kind of on the decline side. It's kind of weak, We're doing something is weak. So one of the reasons why that could be is that we are doing what we can, but we don't realize that we do get mad, and that happens to get mad with the bodhisattva. And then it is kind of destroying a lot of our positivities. So what do we mean by positive indicators of a virtue or practice? And Geshe explains that, say, it can be anything. Maybe you are doing your daily commitments, chanting, practice, mantra recitation, and meditation, you just name it. And if you feel like, okay, you're doing something, or at least trying to attempt to do practice, but your practice is really not delightful to you, isn't it? It's kind of like, okay, yeah, whatever, my commitment, I have to do this, or that you really don't feel really kind of a happiness or a delight in it. It's just like, yeah, kind of happy, but really not kind of happy. Well, then that is an indicative sign that really our practice is not progressing. It is going down. On the other hand, as you practice, right, the more you practice, you do your chanting, do your mantra, but your sense of joy enhances, right? You just really, very happy, right? Then that is indicative that in a positive sign, right? You're progressing. So that's what we talk about. So we can judge, as we do our practice, how happy we are and how much happiness and that comes to our mind. If we started to feel sleepy and like kind of sluggish, practice, not a positive sign.
어디 삼바테시 에니카라 상좀 만지면서 방톱소나 종도 방서나 이는 비지 심진을 맥베 디바디 용 말서 동 용 말서 거다. 그래서 심지에 덤벤디시다.
나래.
인 다기니 치도는 다 심진을 가 고르고도.
나래.
디니까잖아. 인 심진을 맥베 디바 용 말라 거다.
근데 양조수나 가리
데 상좀 라 만지바 뽕 데다라와 데다다 해야 되와
라레
다 상승 만지바선 상승을 컨트롤스 배 잠자자도도 들어와
라레
어 뒤에 보통나 에네 가서 랍디스 가서 인디데 에네 강사 때문에 누유 탐지 민종 송사
노서
랍디스는 데데 땡기리
나오
샤와라 랍디인지와 어 뒤에 보통나 실제로 도메 디시 다셰 상승을 배 종지도 보통나 in 강사 때문에 in 디바사도 디바 강가로 그래서 그런다.
No, sir. So in the compendium of training or Shiksha Samukcha, Labdhu by Great Shantideva mentions two things. If we can Simchen Thamjala Kari Dushasum King.
라
Simchen Thamjala Kari Dushasum.
심 돈베디시
Ultimately,
돈베디시다.
no, Changsemlia.
어 심지어 탐지 돈베디시시나 인 상승을 양가바 마이지바도 용고마르바.
Lare.
심지어 상승 상승을도 유디 상승을 돈베디시시나 인 상승을 돈베디시와시 인 상승을 마저지 가자 심지 상승을 뭐바세도 종주야 되니까 덥나 어쨌든다 인 심지를 미베데 네바 용고마르스 랍주 송캬스
So if we learn to regard bodhisattvas as our teachers, right, one, and we learn not to disparage or belittle bodhisattvas or badmouth about them, you can do these two things. In the compendium of training, it is said, then we will be able to prevent a lot of negativities even in relation to sentient beings. Yeah, because, well, maybe in my footnote, it's not because of Geshe. It's like because who do the bodhisattvas cherish more? Sentient beings, right? So if we learn to regard bodhisattvas as teachers and learn not to belittle them, disrespectful to them, then we will be able to prevent a lot of negativities and harm towards sentient beings.
Well, 장서 가는 유미시 다 장서서 가는 요 하고 말이셔도 우승 일로 송바다 인 담배디시 깨네 인 그게 사사신 당나종고레스 저 당나종에서 가서 지다다 수에는 용마대시 요네다 당나종에서 그러와 어디 있다 그랬지 가가 당나종에는 인 장서 니바 용마를 봐 어디 당나종은 이제 어디시 인세다도
As it is stated in the Kashyapa chapter, Vishnu Liu in Tibetan, it is stated that we don't know who is Bodhisattva or who is not, and where are they. So if we learned to, develop pure perception of all sentient beings, right? Tibetan word is Dagnang. The pure perception means look at them from positive perspectives, right? The goodness in them, and don't make it your business to see what they are lacking or their weaknesses, right? That's positive perception. So if we learn to look at sentient beings through pure perceptions, and as if every sentient being is like a bodhisattva or something, then we are never going to make a terrible mistake, right, of getting mad with the bodhisattva or harming, a bodhisattva.
연대 저 년법 깔아봐 이제 초기선에 초기선에 뭐죠 예바 좋아하면 당기들 또면 뒤에 샤네 초기선에 가서 돈에 인가봐 줘라서
No.
어디지다 인가봐 주세요 그런 값을 받나 다음에 장소들에서 에는 거는 텔 연대 또 소설 그게 에는 때라시아 값을 받서나 에는 줘고 그러면서 이제 배 초기는 요 제시 인가봐 주고 말이죠.
And so at the bottom of page 79, the passage reads, I quote, this is from Kashyap's chapter, you should train in the pure perception of all living beings that comes from developing the idea that all beings are the teacher. You should praise Bodhisattva when they are listeners on the hand, and so on. So explanation given is, yes, we have to learn to respect bodhisattvas as if they are teachers, learn to praise them. But praising them doesn't necessarily mean that we do it in every situation or circumstances. If it's appropriate, right, in the right time, right, then we should, praise the bodhisattva. Not that we have to advertise about, them in every time and under all circumstances. That may not necessarily be the right thing to do.
어디 가서 다까지 집에 있는 랑 멤버십에 심진노 될라 차와니 되다 까지 가서 집에 유되래 랑 멤버십에 쓰는 다 배는 디스워다 소설 비글려기 있는다 예두 소리 지금 말이야 가서 소설 로그인 줘라 어디 가서데 이니 이제 뭔지 비게야 특별 멤버들 람 멤버를 막고 보신 소설 비게 특별 쳐보는 거야 탑시 샤고로 해서 봐 어디시에서는 다 이는 당기 가서 심지어다 기와시월라 엔데 기바께시바데 나지 디니 뭐라 제가 다 성주를 거야 데바요는 인 콜 기바께시 뭐라 어디시가 나지 니베니 뭐래요 다데 심지 기와시발엔 기와시면 기바티데서 다페나 다 생계에서도 다 기바께시 오지만 가지 다 대바드 셴보시 이는 동안다 예배 남자 하면 어디요 말에 인디렉트 치열시나 엔제 삼나지 그런데 배 디바사다 치열해요 뭐 사서 시그러 됐어요.
At the bottom of page 79, you find the fourth positive phenomenon or light practice, a positive action, which is translated here as causing the living beings that you are helping to mature, to not want the modest vehicle, but to adhere to perfect enlightenment. Okay. What did we say there? I think Geshe's explanation sounds better to me. In English, sometimes it gets weird like that. I think that the Tibet, I think in the word there seems to be like those people, I think this must be the translation of that part, I'm thinking. Living beings that you are helping to mature. What it means is, in the Tibetan term, it's like people who really trust you. Yeah. So these are the people who are probably seeking your help and guidance, right? And so you should, the idea is give them sort of the right direction. And the example Geshe given is like like in the case of teachers and who trust them. They're disciples, students, isn't it? So then the teacher should guide them like to seek enlightenment rather than staying with some, less than enlightenment goal, right? That's the modest vehicle, whatever they have translated it here, right? And so if they are bent upon seeking enlightenment, then they are really not going to belittle anyone who is creating any virtue. Look at the, what is that? Number 2, negative phenomenon or the dark practice, bottom of page 76. making others feel regret about something that is not regrettable, which we explain as like when people do virtues and good things, and then we tell them like, no, what you're doing is really not right, something like that. Then they regret it. So we are not going to do that, right? If we practice the fourth light practice or the positive action, and people who trust you, if you guide them to seek enlightenment rather than staying for less enlightenment, then you learn to appreciate the goodness, the virtue that others do. You're not going to say that like, what you're doing is not good enough, right? We should be doing something else, right? And how could that happen? According to Geshe's explanation, is people who really know about the Dharma, they are less likely to do that. But people who really have not learned about the tungva, the transgressions, and the different types of breaking the vows, all of those things, then they might sometimes find themselves indulging in that. Like they say, like, you know what kind of practice you're doing? Like, well, that's kind of a weak practice. Do that one. Something like that. So then in the practice, if somebody has been practicing that for a long time, like, oh my God, did I mess up my life all this time? No. See, that's the bad rap.
대양 랑기 거네 디자 대다샤고 디자텔 사바마 니원 조면 조면 되세요다 소소비게 티바셔본 거야 탑지시고 뭐 디자도 소 탑지시는 거 뭐다는 예봐요 말이세 디가 조면이 도도 말아 다 소소시 소지강가 있는데 산지가 되는 건도 강가 약고 들어와 가서 소소 살리고라 소소 저래샤니 티진 거 탑시고 뭐도 양고 티진 거 뭐다나 소소 예봐 주고 말이세
right. And so on back up on page 80, where probably must said, Geshe's explanation is that if you try to guide or lead and encourage and inspire those who trust you to follow the path leading to enlightenment, and should they fail, right, or they are disinterested, they failed to walk on the path, that is not going to be your fault. Okay? It does not mean that if you make an attempt, you have to succeed in everything. But it depends on so many factors, right? And maybe they don't have interest, maybe they have lacking the merit, I don't know, whatever they have. So it's not going to be your fault. At least you are being sincere in guiding and leading them to enlightenment. But should many of them don't go there or fall apart or something on the way, that's not going to be your problem. That's the maybe American translation, right? That's not going to be your fault.
That's no you bang this. She the what time you talk about Ning Taban road, she and the immediate Javaza Jave, Shady, immediate Jave, Josh Munibishero said that in no Jew, the Nibimu in that data. For some years, I'll go do some back to trouble you ever say. Young call young Javaja, did it you see Marwa? The new rotating so.
No, so. So as we said, this fourth positive phenomenon or the action is antidote to the second negative phenomenon or the dark practice. The reason is that if you are so inspiring those who trust you to follow the path leading to enlightenment, then you are not not going to discourage anyone creating virtue or doing positive things.
That Jagu Shonsen, and the Usun she was inside. Minuta 7 dorming Manite, Murica, Coin, Jurica, was Tongil, Takaji, Shonju, the Hiratashi Morris, any Milunegal, Jego Morsonia, and the Milum of the Nisebel of the Jazan Yomori, Tipe, any Savage song, Grecia, the Resha.
And so bodhicitta is a very precious state of mind that we must not forsake. It is even said in the Bodhisattva literature, even in our dream state. Like even in a dream state, we should not forsake bodhicitta. If that's the case, when we are in a wakeful state, of course, we cannot, right, abandon or forsake precious bodhicitta.
What did that the no Jewish the Gaji shape the Trudon of the Redo? No, the Tongan of the young, counting never you know the Shanju Lani Yanda, the tennis Sindor Minjuros, whatever the Kadu Chinabi ene 상주에서 양양 거만 좀 지게는 ene 냠도 말 쓰고서 봐.
So,
양양 맞는 거 너도 그러와.
no, no.
해송서사.
So, whatever we're doing, it is said that we should, frequently remind ourselves about the precious bodhicitta. And if we learn to remind ourselves often about bodhicitta, then there's a less chance for it to diminish, isn't it?
어디 다 현어 정주선 폐야 탑기도부터 엔티세도와 나제 총중시 센나다 엔 현이 차도래도 현이 조발 되려야 쇼는 현을 비게 대화쇼는 가보시니 될 차도 맞이시 엔 가보시는 엔 정주선이야 요앞에야 글 누고 그랬어.
Yes. And there are other things that really facilitate enhancing bodhicitta in our mind. For example, we should learn not to be jealous of others' success. And actually, we should be rejoicing, right? Be happy when others are doing well. Or not to let our ego get the better side of us, like become very egomaniac, right? So we can be humble and we can be more generous, not miserly about, and less, jealous. All of these things become positive factors to enhance bodhicitta.
어디 다 현요 그래서 주는 당지도 엔 정주선 배 용하다 어디에 신이 여보 신배나 엔 교화신 탐지도 엔 정주선도 문제와 그랬어. 또 제다 그래서 제다 몽디 미다는 해서 이사와 된도 다 간지 되래 간지 또 신나는 천대 맞이 교화심하라 정주선 앞에 그랬어. 너희 동들에도 우승 시발 자지면 돼. 우승을 왜 군조딩이래도 군조딩세야 다들.
디 양조지 소런 경에 있다 야우스코마서.
라 군조딩세야 돼. 대세도와 저는도小学生 중앙당 여와지지 용공의 정주선 다 정주 중앙 안에서도 여와 현대신 정주선 공무원 봐시 드디어 그러나 여와데 뭐 여와 심말라이 정주선도 문제가 되게 됐어. 어디 송샤스 거.
At the bottom of page 80, we have a passage quoted from Ratnakuta collection. And the explanation given is that in this life, if we familiarize ourselves with the bodhicitta state of mind, and before we do anything positive, we generate bodhicitta motivation, and whatever we are doing, we conjoin it with the bodhicitta like that. If we get used to that, by the power of doing that in this lifetime, in our future lives also, our bodhicitta will, continue.
어다 되게 다 정주선 넘어서가 되게 다 그래서 데려와 너무 맞아 타봐 미요 냠는 실지 와서 선바들이거라. 다 선바들 다 가진 되어버리고 선바 냠는 실지 저 너부시기도 심질로 본암 예 상지 도바 미니냠의 심진도와 튼주는 데는 무슨 동안 튼주는 제발 렘나 냠베 저저히 레중 대바도 소진라 로바 냠나네 냠바장지 괴인베스 동유 쇼나 무슨 렘베 쇼가절라 냠주 장라니 쇼가절미고 샤베 쇼고시 시 몽부게도세 다디 가지 그래 가지다 정주쌤들이야 냠니셔저바 쇼다 가래서나 됐어 다 랍자들라 너부시기제 인 심질로 본 nga시 랍나 틱nga레는 예 상제도 미는 냠네 인 신윤도아 튼주 데레다 더제 숨도는 튼주 조글 튼주랜데나 인 정유동 그래서 인 심질로 그래서 뒤에 누우면도 심질로 정하다는지 인 노고 말이스 그 디레도 더 튼주 뒤 노월이야 당보인 정주심 동조这些 튼주 노월이 영주스 소주 쉬서는 인거 예바지 그러면 이 동조 말이스 가지 대화 데레도 다들 너무 되게 말했어요. 튼주는 정주심 그래서 무슨 동야 될 애는 심전 뒤도 사기서서 말했어. 상바다가랑 튼주 고고 말했어. 다가랑 무슨 동으로 그래. 무슨 동은 넘바 동으로 그러와. 저 때요 말아. 제때 되게면 누구스. 됐어. 다랑로 됐어.
At the bottom of page 80, the caption reads, the method of repairing the spirit of enlightenment if you do weaken it. And it carries over to page 81. I think our critic contends that the way you lose bodhicitta is when you are in a session, I think. And so you started to feel like, okay, I don't think I can work for this sentient being kind of thing. But somehow you realize that, you kind of correct yourself. Okay. I think something is not making sense. Okay, so it's not a session. So I thought there was something that makes sense. In a sort of short period of time, if according to a critic contends that first kind of you develop this thought of forsaking a sentient being, and then like a little later you're like, oh no, you just kind of change of heart. Then they said in that case your bodhicitta is still intact, but you have not forsaken it. According to our system, right? They say no, that's it. Once you, in your mind, you generate the thought that you just give up on any sentient being, right? Then you lose the bodhicitta. It's not like, and the second time, like, oh, I have a change of heart. I'm going to, think about the bodhicitta. No, it doesn't work that way. Once you give up, right, the thought arises, and you really sort of give up on a sentient being, you lose the bodhicitta.
Oh, dear, that only that Nabushi didn't send the Simji to Jumanji. Jawashi the Simji wounded Minju, Jumba, Jumba, and they don't didn't go by in this Lamdun, and then the Jawa subject Shiki have a lava young song. She has on the Shiki have an Uzungi Suva in the Dini Takaji Deresha in the Dada Tondado, do you know? Kodo Dere do Karsas, Labja she would do that. Any Jamdu Labja Ganlia. Kars Labja Ganla, any Nobushi, Takabushi, Jubatisi Jabsona, or Tit Jaya Delia, and the Sinji Labja Shadow, Labja Tisha. That Tisha did shout on that, Rolu did share the most Juzunga Labja Sigu, Mosula, Kadilabja Sigu, part of Nishi the Gasha. Juzunga Labja, he take a maris, Karisina, Tadati, Jamdo Labja, in Nabushi Gabushi Dubati, keep doing the Chungu Ganga Sunga, Shozi Lavaka Marva, Jamdu Labja, Jamdo Shisha, Jamdo Shugura. That Nabushi, the Gabushi Ganga Poya, give Shungu in the Bongo. So the dish of the Bill Labla, Jigumundu, Pagade. That is the order of Jasuya. Young March is so that they are. Don't assume but Tamsi that and says Lava says young Jodish Chum Chick to a Lamdun got that. Or this is the done in Musing loves a young on the sugar and that you don't love your own the sin and take him to keep it chungu and then the Ganga tomorrow. Shall you say, don't be loves a tomorrow, Raymond, Pakas are all. That Maris, the Musing loves is Lana, Musing loves our Maris, Carson, Auntie someday, and dollars so much time she is. In the Cheval, she was a lamb, she was the leg of Mambush and dish that the what Mambush you do, or the Ganga dish at Deshina, in a day, Cursa. This is word, that Muslim Champion loves a regmunus. Or this way, Muslim Champion loves a regmunus, Muslim Champion loves a in dollars, but Tamji Muslims Kela was in dollars, but loves a Ganga Kela Marva. Loves a Ganga, that's Sadum Shogi, the Yeshi Ganga Kela or that thick Kasha. Did that look at the divine do the Lamdun de all somewhere.
No, Tango Yabus Comas get under the Diruba, Castor, Champion Lapta, Napuch,
Champion Lapta, the Nabushi, the Karsapama, the Telia, Tundu Mandina, Simtele, Nabushi Pama Delta, the Labja Shawari.
No,
that shows you some in the Sibjing, Tonshi Tosa Marisan. In the summer, Tunzu, Tuchung, love, so choose on. No, this shows you some Tongo Maris Lara, the bottom with that, the bottom race, Carson, Coratambo is this Tonshi Tosa Mariam, but Tagana to do a good guy, Yomari, Tagana, the bottom race. That Jamdo Labjagan, Nabushi, did Labjashanti, Sanzi Labjasha, Militi, has a shuntas. Jamdo Labja in the Shungu, the Dingage, Yambo language, Nabu. She the Gabushi Gaga Bongoro.
기부 딩게 방고로.
rumpangu ta ko yogi shiwa ga pangu te suya ga songro
알게 나고 최시다 디카베 최시디 전주선만 많이 가서 전주선 많이 보주스데 기부 딩라 자도 거로디.
ma 다다 자데데 저주 싱글랍자 가 테드면 니마 야르와 신의 기부 슝은데 딩에 다 나부 시세데 가르스 가가 미게 어레도와
알아.
미가 있는 pongo에 차로
알아 미게 많이 라라.
이네 기부 슝은나 pon고와 딩이나 pon고와 세데데 정승이 랍자 샤그나 레그면 도스고와
알아.
어디서 그래 총자 샤수 다 가
알아디 정서 랍자 샹디고 뭐라.
어디 총자 샤수
차게데스만
어디 총자 샤수 다 드네 마신 다다디 시대지 다다 잡자디요 무슨 장병한테 양 샴데 마시온데 양 너는 뭐 탐제다세 마테지라운데 라자 티스는 쩌발시바 라운데 양 벤돌스 베 랍자 강가세네 이니 정주세 베 도벨 랍자 강가 케된 거거든 티는 무슨 장병 랍자 시든 지금 문도스 어디다 주동 랍자디 코라지당 같이 마도진데 로 샤고야 문도스 오토스바 가샤
나 간제디 낙죄시다 깔죄시디 간제 괜찮 가자.
어디서
랍자 작아요 말지.
다 됐어요 랍자라 도벨 랍자 가리카서는 이니 점주 랍자 강 너지 시봉하다 까지 시드바 디샤도아 어디서 티티고 말시디 티 비데디 기부 슝우다 내가게 점수는 자르바 정수습에 네 정수습 그 미디쇼 하고라
알아래.
어디 정수습 그 미디쇼 가 말아봐
알아래.
어디서
알아 전주 셈을 잡으려 마도 전주 셈을 찍고 믿은 쇼래데 마 상달을 자죠.
어제다 다다 디고네스 정수습 가서 주둥 랍자시도 정수습 케란 에네 텔링게 민게와 랍자지 하고라 점주 랍자다 단다 간나시도 정수습 자 케랭고 말아 어디서
I think we sorted it out. So our critique contends that Lapcha, or the precepts of bodhicitta, involved refuge precepts, Jamto Lapcha, and then the four dark practices or the four negative phenomenon, and the four positive phenomenon or the light practices. So all of them constitute bodhicitta precepts. Okay, and so then we ask, we means ask, okay, so what do you mean like these are bodhicitta precepts? Do you mean these are the precepts of the aspiring bodhicitta or the engaging bodhicitta, or which one are you talking about? Okay, and in the first thing that we say that the refuge precepts cannot be regarded as bodhicitta precepts because those are common to all Buddhist practitioners, right? The small scope, the middle scope, and the advanced scope, right? Because that belongs to all. They are not exclusive to the bodhisattva practice, right? So you cannot include, right, in that. Yeah. Now, if you say that these are the precepts of aspiring aspiring bodhicitta or the engaging bodhicitta, because these like the negative and the positive phenomena are in some sense not exclusive to the bodhisattva practice, because they are also applicable to the other practitioners, for example, the intermediate level practitioners. It's just that the way we kind of worded it, I think, it seems like my understanding is, these are worded, in relation to the in relation to bodhicitta, but because these are negative phenomena, anybody has to abandon negative, right? Negativity. So it's not something exclusive to the bodhisattva practice. And the positive ones are something that everybody should do the positive things. So they're not, do not constitute the precepts of bodhicitta. When we say precept of bodhicitta, for example, with engaging bodhicitta, once you have make the commitment, taking the engaging bodhicitta vows, then there should be those specific precepts, right, that goes with the vows. Okay, so none of these are, that kind of a precept. So the answer, so what the critique contends is that these constitute bodhicitta precepts. So the answer to that is no, because the refuge precepts belongs to all other practitioners, and these the four negative phenomena and the four positive phenomena are not something exclusive to the bodhisattva practice, because anybody who cares to grow spiritually should abandon the negative ones and adopt the positive one. So there's nothing specific about bodhisattva practices here. I think that's the answer.
제도 단다 거주시도 낙주해야돼 그러지도 심지야 폐야가 그래 차시에서 샤를 뭐 이제 어디 들리는 게 와그 또에 남자 가야 말해세 그래서 대다 이는 낙주시도 좀 정좀 때 매버다 자 대다 시대 남서 자동들의 용 무슨 돈은 무슨 돈은 죽도 돈으로 죽음 돈으로 그래서 티시도 단다데 그런 데 너바냐고 말했어야 돼 니그만도 무슨 돈은 너바 돈으로 와라 정신 돈은 너바냐고 와 어디 티그만도 세 저 됐다는 데는 다 자동도 샤고 하자 디시나 에네 때 정신스벌 트레바다 들어가가 자동을 샤고도 돼 티는 니그만도 어디 다 티그만도 예 메데시어 시요 튼주 네 자와니요 다 튼주 뜻서 자와니요 거기 쉬월 때만 나나 디도 때면 뭐 수준류 시외들 예벌 아니 저기가 가지 정식 형론리 다디 가샤데 해 사샤시야 더 심질로 제르면 다 심질로 메봉세야 되겠다 심질로 메봉세야 돼 심질로 메봉 디그 말이나 심지 이섬 디레스나 하상 타게세야 다테 레도와 심질로 메봉세야 돼 제르면 심지도 동지비 에데 미뉴스 냠나 안 레봉은 무슨 때문에 니도 세라 심지 시다바 빙네 심지 좀 니도미시세네 시 제데 다도 무슨 말아 샤주심 디게나 인 심지 니스도미시 좀 야동 도미시 랑메시세나 인 샤주심 생이서 봐 레르고 레스 디는 되게 말했어 다 심지 제가 가지 니도미시선 가랑 인거 샤주심 동으로 뭐 이제 심지 인스도들 디제 르 가사这个当年的小学生东面呢，甚至你了同不起上的小学生东嘛是吧？送不起大家东这个吧，我的用我的就小学生谁说想上门都是我都是把干下的。
So we are on the middle page 82, and before we said that something related to the Bodhisattva precepts. I mean, what we have talked about, the 4 negative phenomena are not really, do not constitute bodhicitta precepts, but these are some factors, right, that could weaken our bodhicitta. And the 4 positive phenomena are the factors that could help us to preserve bodhicitta, but they are not the precepts, okay? And otherwise, we might have to say that if you get angry with the bodhisattva, then that constitutes a root transgression, bodhisattvas, right? But there's not in the 18 root transgressions called, like getting angry is one of the root transgressions, right? Yes, it destroys a lot of merit, but it does not constitute root transgression or tsatung in Tibetan. Okay. So then in the middle of page 82, the continuation of what it means to forsake sentient being. As we talked about this before, if we make up our mind that I'm not going to work for this one sentient being, right, give up on one sentient being, then that's called forsaking sentient being and forsaking bodhicitta. Then the bodhicitta cannot hold, Whereas the critic seems to like, no, in a short period of time, first you think, okay, I'm not going to work for this sentient being, and then you have a change of the heart. They said, no, you're still bodhicitta is intact, right? He said, no. They sound like, no, it's not. If you kind of give up on one sentient being, it doesn't really constitute forsaking bodhicitta, right? If giving up on one sentient being does not constitute forsaking bodhicitta and the forsaking sentient being, then we also have to say by the extension that forsaking 2 sentient beings should not constitute one, or the 3 or the 4th one, right? It should be the same rule, But that doesn't hold water.
어디에 제가 디 람종 저와들 가지디 람종 저와들 제자도와 인자부터 가지 인자부터 루조시 통매 애니 로보 샤왈라지 샤와서 저가게 네바레시마 네바 망보지 거니 다들 가지에서는 도스 뭐 탐지 송고 그래서 가지에서는 디지가도 쥐발 쇼바스는 송론보도 송고 그래서 어디에다 누지 망보 녀가 셴부지사리 어디 람종 저와까지 라라는 지여발 셰도 현단 라반데 듣다 오시 셰도 가지는 디도 점루딩디 에네 세메지바 템바지요 셰네 그거네 로모드라기 다 동스마 몽보시네 인다 거기 병아매 라마 몽보제게 다 거기 누지 몽보 유네면에 간시 가다자 너런서 라마 고메게 라메 소야 다가라니 이 소소도 디바도 레시바 올라 샤세 어때 되게 말래라 다 콩데도 람존 좋아시게서라 람존 좋아디니 람존 좋아세디 조지 좋아 말레스티 인 조지 군인 좋아 람존 좋아지다 포랑 뜰 휴도 람존 좋아 디디 삼요서와 디디 삼네 에네 디네 단 사일 바페드다 에네 노조로자에 인 제스 때 예르 동서시 야 휴베리스 다 적저르다 저 다데 예 동서지 다 조제니 까트이지와 저도 유저단 단 가지 람존 좋아세디 소저단 저한테 노조로자서도
하르다디
어디 람존 저다 단다 먼저 내려와 그래서 야 좀도마다 드네 단다 뒤주니마 에네 가도라마도래 에네 람존 좋아 좋은 좋아 희고 말했어 저 나서 잡여라
그래
다티 좋은 좋아 희게 비지 되거든 게 삼주이다 단다 가도니시나 예게 라서와서야 돼 강도들 나서 라서 근데 강도 쇼지 남다 제가 신도와 신에는 쇼지 남다서 봐지 에는 나서 쇼만 못 해샤 다 비지 나서다 텔레마 이기래서 되게 살도 다지 지단테다 배에 연결 들어와 맞아 디시는 나서 제레스 시다 텔레야 인 좀도 와도 쇼저와 켈링 말레스 시 나서 소시에 실록도 시에레스 이나야 디나야 에네 지다 리기야 뭐 도스 아니 노르데버데 데스 도스 인 노르데버데 뭐다 리기 요데데 인 라는 기 때문에 가서봐 제르버제 통화 유스 노르데버데 다 통화요 말봐 어디 봐샤 있어 어디래도
타겐디 탄다 토도 되데 탄다디 람링 데와디 가자 람링 데와디나리아 다 룩망고스케요 와게 데데타 룩 한가데 태바샤고래 같이 걸다게
룩 강가 다디 카지 두제데 강가 러랑들 누구누구서 면도 아기 믹스에 찍을 가바스게 면도 티 강가 태고 말았지 티 콩두서 람존 저와도 그러와 람존 저와 콩두네 태고 말이 람존 저와 쇼지 말에 있어다
다 이네 다다 디케 거래 인더보디다 네 곰보도
어디서야 되거든 람존 저와 중수들다 람존 저와 엔더보딜 इन लोटो शौजु मा गिबा शुंग मांबो जमाही इन सोज लाबजा दे मांबो टेनि शेयसरो
आले लोंस कोंदुगा चले इने रे मारसा
नंदो दाना ते जायसरो
आले लोंस
ओ त्यसो तंबो ट्री दो देशि वर्ता
आले लोंस
ते गंगा से ता गंगा से रु माज ता ने फुल या खाजी मांबो ए पा ते ये दो जा दे युसरो ता खाजी ता बे现在伢这个要么是俺那边松州这的因是的他是小人要的是的到空头的那种着的那种着的多是的学姐嘛的那种老早的是的他妈的怕下下这个人说他刚刚妈的不知道今天没理解嘛不都是因那因妈的不知道下过吧他妈的不得感觉他
So we're on the bottom of page 82 to 83. So there's a mention of commentary on the difficult points of the Lamp of Path to Enlightenment. So this is a particular commentary on Atisha's Bodhiprata Pratibha or Lambden, or the Lamp of Path to Enlightenment. So it's in this commentary, it seems to be different positions about the precepts have been kind of mentioned, right? And then kind of trying to refer back to masters like, King Indrabodhi, Nagarjuna, Asanga, Aryasura, Shantideva, Chandragomin, Shantarakshita, and so forth, right? And then they just present so many different kinds of views about the precepts, and so it's kind of so many things. And then some even end up saying like, well, this is what I heard my Lama say. Okay, so that's all it is. I'm just telling you. This is my Lama say, and I'll just follow my Lama. Guru said so. So the Rinpoche's kind of a point on this is like, that commentary on the Lamp of Path Enlightenment is really not written by Atisha himself. Yes, Atisha did, because who is the author of Bodhiprata Pratibha, Lamp of Enlightenment root text, and he wrote a short commentary on that when he was in Purang, a region in the western part of Tibet. But then later, at Samye, the Nakso Lostava, the translated Nakso, maybe he got some permission from the Adisha, said, could I elaborate a little bit on your commentary or something? So maybe Adisha might have given him some permission. So he wrote this commentary on the Lamb of Path Enlightenment. Okay? So in this Lamb commentary, there are so many kind of viewpoints have been presented, but Lama Tsongkhapa says, you know what, yes, this work has some good merit, and the things which are correct, I have used it, quoted it in different parts of my Lamrim, but there are some things which are misrepresentations, things like that. Of course, then Lama Tsongkhapa was not going to quote the misrepresentations, right? So overall, he said, well, these viewpoints are all not acceptable in some sense, like saying especially like, well, this is what my Lama told me. Like, so everybody comes like, oh, this is what my Lama says. Like, no, is that, no, that's not acceptable, you know. Just simply saying my Lama, told me that, you know. And so Geshe-la's own sort of a take on that is, so most of the people believe in Atisha and his commentary on his Lamrim, but then who believes in this other viewpoint, like say Nakso Losava's commentary, right? It is possible. Geshe-la said that's his just take on that. Another master called Geshe Laksova, right? I think he went to get a lot of teachings from Nakso translator, and so maybe he just believed in that. So maybe there could be some lineage coming through that line. So the followers of that lineage, they all said, like, yeah, things said in that commentary are correct. But Lama Tsongkhapa says no. It has a merit. And I acknowledge that. I quoted what is correct in different parts of my Lamrim, but there are things wrong. So, that's what he mentions.
What did it cause that children did Lamrong because Java did some that syndical language with the my sign about you the past that Yomara, Nazola user, Nazola Yobora. The silent and the dead years don't show the cheese. That is sure, year, but actually don't dead on degrees Picato is at it. And it corrupts
Yes, Atisha himself, in his scribble writing, he wrote a short commentary on the Lamb of Path Enlightenment. And so when he was in Purang, and so when they moved to the Samye, he brought it with him. And when Nakso was very close to Atisha. And so Nakso probably got the permission, but Atisha said, "Can I elaborate a little bit on this one?" He probably said. So in elaborating it, probably he also, did some good job, and also he made some mistakes here, right? So that's why this commentary is not accepted as Atisha's auto commentary on Lamb of Path Enlightenment.
Oh, did that. Not here, love Jenny models that are in the Reja, that Muslim loves that, and those who are Tamji is out of a young Jamdu loves a gun, no bush, the Kavushi to a shaggy say, what it loves at the model, she that and don't be shocked at Lamdron or Table. I have any tables in the Deco, yes, or loves any model, loves and Lamdron, the Sinji with Shokata in last Lamdron Corache in Jawala Tesi. That's simply shows in a then the Sinju Bojo Shokages are all this that is at it. What there is, that did not this is at it. The Sinju Bobo Shogan, and the Mushi da Duvia Gazette user. So the Mushi da Duvia in the Simji Lavzaka Marese. So the Mushi, you know, and Simji that's a yard or the Shajung Jigrese. Indeed, and he got the deep solutions in their Matis. Mushi Duat, they two Marva, so some other. That's usually because Mushi Shia Carres and this order. Mushi, you know, in the Yard of Carson top shot, Yabo Yungora, who didn't like here, but the soldiers in Lavzaka Maris, that their team is.
No, so I'll enjoy joke, same Bokcha Chogan are you in
Oh, Chogan,
so we're on page 83. I think Atisha himself composed a text, if you will, to be able to conduct a bodhicitta ceremony, Semje Bokcho Choga in Tibetan. And in that, I think somewhere he also mentioned about, the practice for clairvoyances, if you will, for clairvoyance. And Lama Tsongkhapa is commenting on that. He said, yes, I know Atisha has stated that in that text, but I have excluded it and not included here in the bodhicitta precepts. The reason is that practice for clairvoyance is not a precept or how should I say, of a bodhicitta. It's like a facilitating factor. If somebody has a clairvoyance, then he or she is able to benefit others a lot, right? So if you have a clairvoyant power, you may be able to help others, but that's not necessarily a part of the bodhicitta practice or the precept. So therefore, he said, even though Adisha mentioned it in his text, right, as a contributing factor, but I've excluded it, as discussing these precepts here.
The PJ the Hitam days of the Minduti, the Kizoti, Domban Bojo, the day you said to Ganga Long with the Baru, Sheva of Kayi Long and Sheva Jo, Kayi Heva Jo, Sheva Nizasha, Sheva, God was Mindu. Said that the Domban Bojo, that Tondus or the days, sugar sums. That this is all. So you did take isn't share any Tondu of the sick, don't get lost. My can go on it. They wanted to do that Juma Delta, did Shuta here, so I named that on the Delta. Because how long
That's not Shuma did he shoot
the Juma Dita, Goliath.
No.
There's should shake us that the Shuta Tondu here. That should shake us, that should shake us, Laudon Share.
So that's Geshe-la's plan. So next week, we will go back to the special insight section into Lamrim, Laktong, Vipassana. But before that, he wants to spend like half an hour to sort of summarize, all the things we talked about here, because we talked about so many viewpoints, this and that, right? So he just wants to offer some clarification on that, like half an hour in the beginning of the teaching next Sunday, and then the remaining time we will continue with the special insight section from Lamrim.
In the Tawaya,
And so we welcome your questions now.
I was wondering if we could just clarify on the forsaking any being section, if it was just the mere arising of the thought, or if that there's some intention coupled with that.
Sure. Dagi kienda semje lue ta se sure wa ge. Di kan di yang ju shu cho che sa. Semje lue ta se di sem na ya ta din de temba sam ge wa ge to ko shan de wa. Ta semje di tuen chi me sa wa. Temba sam re yang ku long de je be ten chi me sa la wa ge. Ko che ba shu ra kan de na so da semje lue ta se wa ge. Ta to ko sha sho wa ge. Ta nam do ro de sha sho wa ta semje di tuen chi me sa nam do sha ba ta ga na sha go re yang ku long de je de wa ge. Ta kwe tuen de chi me sa jo wa ge.
다 this is 다 칸점을 누구지 말아 다 신데디 돈 미시서 소타전 다 살다
삼바삼 그 디고 말이야
삼바다 갔다 미시섬 그 로다로 제자로 어디선 다 다들 누구야 휴도 가게 휴도 태순산데 디고 말아 다디 신데디 돈산 미시섬 타제선 다 살다.
Yeah, so what it means is that, if you have a doubt about it, like, do I really, this kind of a troublemaker here, right? Well, that doesn't mean forsaking it. But in your mind, if we kind of decide, like, okay, I'm not going to, right, work for this person, then that's called forsaking sentient being. Yeah, so it comes with your kind of that decision or commitment. But if you have a doubt about, like, yeah, I kind of giving a lot of trouble, I don't know, maybe I should, no, that's not giving up, right?
어디서 당기대 제름을 송도 그랬어. 심지직을 했다네. 이 철수쌤 양쪽에 이는 양쪽에 이는만 손 양쪽에 신도 동라다. 심지 세계에서 미대 철수쌤 생이자 하고 싶어라. 심지 마다나 어디 너시래도 저거다.
Because when we generate bodhicitta, it really embraces all sentient beings, isn't it? If a particular sentient being is excluded out of that all, right, then that wholeness doesn't hold by itself. So that's what it is. That's why Lama Tsongkhapa is very, clear on this, that if we give up on one particular sentient being, then that's forsaking it. Otherwise, then we will end up, we're like, okay, do we have to give 2 now or 3 now? It's just, it's not making sense.
Geshe, thank you for your teachings. If you exert anger, and even for a few minutes, and you recognize that anger, and then you regret, do you still, by the fact that you were angry, do you still lose the merit that you accumulated until that point, or the fact that you actually recognize it, help you build on the merit that you accumulated?
Okay. Koran condition de de ta ta gi khong se gen sa na en kya sa shi bu jong gu sla wa gen
어레레
si de kan la pen da khong sa cha sha wa gen
어레레
ta khong ke ji chi sa gi na ka sa ne yang khong sa ba de ngo shen je wa gen
어레
a ka ta ding ma son se yo ba chen de wa
어레
ta de den ding mi se be na ta khong sa ju sa cha ba wa
어레
sa cha ba de ko ke ji ma chi gi pa gi ta khe sa jom sa ba re ta di shu yo ba che ba wa gen
어레
di hang ma khe sa de de ko ka de de khe ba ro ke yo res ko ke
알레
ta khong de sa ba wa gen
어레
ta sa ba di so khong sa ba ngo ta che yang de yo ba che ro wa a ka ta di chi yu mi de sa ba ina ta ki khe sa jom sa che ro wa gen
어레
ta khong ne yu ki ke chi ki pa ro ta la ba di khe sa de jom ba re ta di wo khe sa de di ko khas ko ta ko yo ba chi go wa
알레 더 뜨뜨뜨 지도 들어와 걸사 코도 게다 좀서 배짜미 당한테서 코도 체중 좀 체중 요러와
la le
다 빼는 제와자도 뭐 코도서 샤샤나 에디 코 잡셔로다 코도 사나 영조 제바신 샤위나 영 코도 게자 지바데 코론 좀 되고 어디 수조 지 샤셔도 영 파조 마상의 야 민의 야자 노메 잡아서 신 펜도 요러와
la le
어때요 펜도 요러면 코도 코론 되데 중간에도 좀 살아와
la le
다들 영조 코도 샥바신 다야 돼 요러와
la le
어때서 다야 돼 요러
no of course Geshe says the sense of like what does it mean anger destroys virtue, right? Does it completely uproot the virtue, or what does it mean? Of course, then when we talk about the anger also differs in terms of intensity as well, right? There's kind of small anger, there is the big anger, crazy one, that kind of thing, right? And the example you have given, let's say one moment we become angry and the next moment we realize we got angry and we regret for doing that. To some extent, yes, that anger destroys certain merit, but then also you're grateful for it, right? You're confessing it, so you're generating positive energy as well. So let's say if we become angry with no regret at all, that anger is going to be very destructive, isn't it? But if we get angry and then we regret in the next moment, that anger is going to be, a different kind of anger. Yes, it destroys certain merit, but on the other hand, you are also, generating some positive energy here. Does that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, please. Yeah. Where's the button? Yeah, at the bottom. Yeah.
Try. I've accumulated the 4 negative aspects, and they have tormented me for several years. So my question is, how can I obtain forgiveness or obtain bodhicitta when I know that I've foolishly done things knowledgeably and done stupidity?
Okay. Kurang kan disho de dire ta laptan chebe ne ta nakwe chu shi chi ro ba gen ta nga ro cha cha nakwe chu shi de che so so ga ka no ri ro che yo res ro ba gen zam zam ne sam shin de che yo res ro ba gen si de ta dikwa chim chi sa sa bre ta di dikwa de ta ya so mar ro ba gen a che ne ani di chi ka so ta chang ju sem yang jo di che cho la ni ka sam lo ta ya ro ka ro yo res ro do ba gen
dikwa de this ro karsa dikwa sa ta su yewa신 샤웨이나 인포 타야요 내가 요 말했어요. 됐어요. 까드면 라면 들여서 오는데 네가 써야 타가요 레세. 그래서 상지야 뭐 네가 타야면 된것도 상지 고모 봐야 밀리점 톱도 말했어요.
So Geshe says, in the Buddhist literatures, what is talked about is yes. In the first place, we should not indulge in any negativities. But then, we do find ourselves indulging in them. The second level is we can do confession. So any negativities can be purified or cleansed through confession practice. We call it shakpa, purification practice. And so that's the great thing about negativity, as the great Kadamba masters of the Geshe say, that negativity is something that is purifiable, isn't it? If negativity is not purified at all, then we have forget about, hope to attain Buddhahood. We cannot, even we don't have a hope to be reborn as a human being next life. We're done. So negativity can be created, but at the same time, it can also be confessed or purified.
돈일 배 사모야고 또 돈이 여부 공주에서는 이 참면 가시와야 인디 딕바이 마그마스 가마마 상이 송여라 송자 세명 가신 지거다 세명 가신 돈이 배 거야 오네 야고 공수는 이 세명 대인스 가라고 면수
Of course, often we talk about sincerely applying the 4 powerful antidotes, right, to purify negativity. If all those 4 powerful antidotes are present, any negativity can be purified. Yeah, that's the one. And another thing what the Buddha said, as Geshe quoted from his memory, is that if we really study and learn about emptiness, selflessness, if we really understand what it is conceptually, really correctly, okay, so that understanding is so powerful that Buddha said someone who has understood emptiness deeply, even if he or she has committed the heinous crimes, right, the boundless negativities, I wouldn't call them boundless negativities. So the message is that with such understanding of emptiness, those terrible negativities can also be purified. Okay. So negativities are purifiable. Any other questions, Lars?
I have a follow-up question to the one about anger and loss of virtue.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, I haven't really studied it, but kind of looked at it. In the Abhidharma Kosha Vasubandhus, there is a discussion about that, and he doesn't say that it's anger which caused the loss of virtue, but there is only one thing, and it's a wrong view, not anger or any other. Why is it anger? Why is it so much emphasis on anger?
Okay. 다다기 콘로기 계속 좀 그렇게 송바로와 데데 대유 권한관리 쉬어야죠사. 페나탄다 디 칼서고래 뭐뭐 전화로 와게. 로베 잉잉이 된데 송요 말레스. 아니 계사 좀 해야야. 아니 디 가서 콘로 말을 좀 해도 록대 좀 그래서 와게. 로와. 세디칼이야. 아니 록대기 계사 좀 그러면 다 야디 콘로를 믹스 가네야. 콘로기 계사 좀 그래서 제데 가리나서 와게.
로다 인다 저루신도 로다 인도 예다 동도 그래서 그러와. 예다 배 동도 그래서 그래. 단다데리 예다 좀 그래서 하면 예다 동도 그래서 그러와. 다 콘도 또 첨부를 시기는 예다 중중제는 좀저거 이라. 근데 콘도 예다 거 총을 줘야다. 약보 있는 도구 써야 돼. 뭐 싸움에도 뭐 계절 때 말다. 좀 써야 돼.
알로제션도 록대기 다 계사 배 동도 그래서.
동도 그래서.
I think it's maybe the uses of the word in Tibetan. In the Abhidhamma Kosha, what the Vasubandha talks about is distorted view of the Lokta, the wrong view. The Tibetan word is not destroy, it says completely uproot. Right? Tongpa means you become completely empty. It nullifies completely. Yeah? Whereas when we talk about anger, we don't say it nullifies or uproots it, we say destroy. The Tibetan word is chompa, means to destroy, and tongpa means to empty it completely. So when anger arises, it does not completely, make us empty of virtue. It destroys virtue. Whereas the wrong view in the Abhidhamma Kosha is completely, makes us empty of virtue. It completely uproots the virtue. Yeah.
So basically, wrong view. Wrong view is worse than anger, right?
This is then lokta di ke then the control ta zabche charu wa ke.
어리 로다 로제 게다 체르고로. 코도 게다 체르고 말아. 그런 건 뇌기 와좀.
제도 다 lokta ko 두거를 charu wa ke.
로다 두고 차.
That's right, exactly. So the wrong view is worse than anger.
I have a question about how to cultivate pure perception. About the pure perception there. What is the basis of cultivating?
Okay.
Also in the text here, in our, Geshe didn't mention it, but it says, when you revile bodhisattvas and friends, why friends in particular? Why not every sentient being?
Okay.
that this is what destroys.
Where are
this
we on
is
page?
Page 77, I think it was. Okay, yes.
70 what?
79.
79.
Yeah. The training in the precepts to adopt the 4 light practices.
Yes.
And the third one is developing the idea that all bodhisattvas are the teacher.
Right.
So it's somewhere in the middle. It says that if we have there are no signs of progress in our practice, that means
yes,
that we
yes,
have.
yes.
Yeah.
I found it. Thank you.
So why friends? And what would be the basis for cultivating that pure perception of everybody, not only bodhisattvas?
Right.
As,
Sure. Right. Koran kan di shue di ni ru chak du ro wa gen. To da chi di ta gi ngan zo ta tang na chang go sla ro wa gen. Tang na chang sai di ta chang ju sam ba chi go ja tang na ma sim jen tam ja tang na chang sla ro wa gen. 자 당나 창야 시치요 말바게 창다로 스티 칸데 이나 슬바게 투아지 그러게 다 니바디 다기디 가르쇼고레 까베치 숨바죠 와게 장주 선발이야 아니 신이 수 따세죠 와 디디 칼로 오 라
정신 선발 응가봐 많이 버지와서 돼
올라와 제가 디 칼로 디시 디다 디 데셰기마 게셰시디 디체도 와게 슈나게 अरे द चंचु सेबादा अने पे चो संगे बिस्तोंग के चो लिया अने जी मिन्ये बा जो बता चलाब दोंगा चो से द काजिन लाब ने चंचु सेबादा सेमजेंस मालाब द काले ने सो द चो से स्टिंग लो से
चो दे दे तदा दे देरो करसा ये दा चो से ना पेजे देबे चो से ना 소소 비게 창벌지 버스 추조서야 지금 소소 비게 추어다 되는 대화 용게 지어로
나래
되게 잡으러 좋아서나 저 상벌지 버스 그 빼는 더 디바차 대 지당 심제ले 소소 저 상벌지 버스 데 디바차 지고로 혼자 그래서 그 자슴 좀 쳐요 다 자슴 쳐 루선 디지 디바차야로 어디래 디바차 저 수팅지
당나세 디 장다죠
당나세 때때다 당나세는 때는 도시거다 가자 있는 때 중앙에 연대지에 매 가자다는 요 말아
나네
중시다지 가자는 요 말아
no
저도 그 중요한 연대상 따위는 근데 그 중앙도 연대 따위는 그 명문으로 그러고
그렇죠
대지들도 야 차저도 그러와
나네
또 kopie 연대 빼 셔보면 중앙직이나
나네
또 콘서트하고 있어야지 어디 그 단어 중에 같이 가도 그러.
나네
어디서 단어 좀 정하여라고.
나네
그 강사제단님이 선진수인 하고 말이 정신세바수 하고 말이 저 디바시고 거사 포로 양행문에 저당 세미 주어 말 봐.
나네
그때 딱고 정신세바 인식이로.
나네
서예주바 인식이로.
나네
인식이 딱 나라도 능선 이래서 말없이 어떻게 전화되게 면 용대 찾는 지난 디고 간지.
그렇죠
연대 시작이는 꿈을 못 보이는 거 연대 쇼의 직 다도는 중국어가 세계 놓은 거라. 남자거도 여당가 식디 돼 맞어.
no sir Okay, so you asked 2 questions, and let me see. First, we go back to that positive action practice where it's mentioned of not to despise bodhisattvas and friends, because I think that friends in the Tibetan words is like a chudok, like your dharma friends or virtuous friends. The reason is, yes, when we create any negativities in relation to our dharma friends, that negativity becomes more serious than creating negativities in relation to just other regular people. Regarding the pure perception, the basis is here. The assumption is that every sentient being, has certain, virtue or quality. There's no such thing as completely, absolutely evil being. Some, yes, we have a lot of problems, but there is no such being as like a 200% evil and then nothing goodness about that, right? And so if we learn to look at from whatever goodness somebody has, then that pure perception will help us to overcome, a lot of negative thinking about that person. Now, given that, because of our perception limitations, we don't know who is who, right? Among us, there are bodhisattvas, there are the emanations of Buddhas, we don't know who is who. So if we learn to look at each other from one good, right, like a pure perception, then it will prevent us from a lot of negative thinking and negative actions. On the other hand, somebody might have a tremendous qualities but has one problem, and we look at that from that problem, it can outshine our pure perception of that. And Geshe's example, let's say we can think about one person who is like a great, an eminent person in knowledge and whatever, but the only problem he or she is just a very short-tempered, angry person. Okay? And then it was like, you know what? Yeah, it was a great expert. You know what? Angry man, really. Right? And then everybody just looks at that. It's the only thing we see in that person is the angry man. And that's the thing. So the basis is to cultivate. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Can you send it down to the bookstore?
Thank you for your teaching, Geshe. Geshe just mentioned about understand wisdom of emptiness can destroy negativity. How about cultivate bodhicitta? Can destroy negativity or not? Thank you, Geshe.
Di kanang bro Ani tagi karsa ke da tongba ni ko ya bu
설명가 뭐 있어야 돼.
레게 그래서 안 tongba ni ko ya bu 차वे네 사명가 사명 차교 예배나 로바게 tongba ni 아니 다 또버 로스네 민도 딜리 그것은 뉴바 예배나 장주 쌤 게 로바게 디바 좀 알레 뉴바 가서 수요 시그레스 다 장주 쌤 여러와 장주 그 쌤기 아니 디바 총알라 로바게 뉴바 치종으로 가져요 요서 딱 총둘 단계 여러와게 tongba ni 디가 수요베나 장주 쌤리야
정주쌤이 다 가서 내가 시험배 가서 대세로와 뒷부터 시도 미세 되니 도부 정주쌤이 계시다고 생각이 너무 있어 조조라와 정주쌤이 뒷부 시험 보시고 현다 샤무도 들어 정주쌤 정국에서 다 체교도 대쟁이다 수다 정주쌤도 동의도 거의 신다 다도 정주쌤 뒷부 시험 보고 되시나 정주쌤도 다 샤샤고로 동의도 해라 뒷부 멤버도 드모로 정주쌤 계속 준 거랬어 가서 디보 뭐 좀 더 그러지. 동의도 해라 거기 비지 찍어서 있는 디고로 거기 거기 니가야. 동의도 해야 디 사명가시 사명가 많이 선예송도 와. 다 단다 정주쌤이 디보도 시니도 데도 정주쌤에 계시다 세이 내면이 세이 디보 가서 시험 보이나 정주쌤이
맞아 재밌어.
맞아요 말. 근데 데서 빨되니까 주버셔 빨되는 얘기도 있겠다 실라로. 셔도 빼다 사자 좀 지고 쳐보지 딱그만 잡아좀 집에 도는 도고하지 애들 도알한테 해 지고야나 몇 바위지 냠도 도겠네 이거 라서 대타로 그러 근데 저주스도 있는 네가 가가 타로 그래서 그러지
Of course, bodhicitta is, from Mahayana's perspective, the most powerful practice or the mindset that can purify any kind of negativities. And as Geshe quoted the stanza of Bodhisattva Mahasattva Shantideva from his memory, which basically says like, where else can we find, any other antidote than bodhicitta to destroy all kinds of negativities? So it's attributing that bodhicitta is the most powerful practice or the antidote to purify any kind of negativities. And earlier he quoted a passage from a sutra where it says, understanding deeply emptiness, can also purify, boundless negativities or the heinous crimes, isn't it? So, of course, the most important is for us to be able to integrate both bodhicitta and emptiness. That's the most powerful, isn't it? So, both are very powerful antidotes or practices to purify negativities, but among them, probably bodhicitta is the most, right, as a powerful one. Any other questions? No. Okay. Yes. So once again, reminding you that next week we will go back to special insight section. The first half hour, Geshe will try to summarize some of the things that we talked about from this volume number 2, and then we'll continue with special insight section. I have an announcement to make here. As you know, the Tibetan New Year is coming soon near us. And so on Saturday, February 6th, we would like some volunteers, GSTDL, starting at 10 to clean up our gombas, and so we need a lot of volunteers. So if you are able to help us in any amount of time you could, so please. And there's a sign-up sheet prepared the Rena has. So we need volunteer list, maybe one outside. So please put your name on that, your contact number, so we could reach you. So it's February 6th, Saturday morning at 10. So probably let them. Then the loss I can sang my soul, what? The and there's rocket just like what? Kangen Lode, Dimien, Jinda, Ninda, Namda, Rabse, Jinien, Dungun, Geshe, Seche, Nije, Tuwa, Lewam, Kanda, Sebe, Zora, Mendon, Dungan, Geshe, Rozo, Kula, Puji, Taze, Yala, Ruju, Yang Den, Son, Roda,
Cheto, Nimu, Yilon,
Leje, Jajo, Dunze, Marie, Muse, Dungan, Yogo,
Chini, Jose,
Radhe Nan, Dene, Daje, Saju, Tase, Yunden, Phuntsok, Geshe, Tuyu, Gu, Chuda, Chuda,
Chini, Jinde, Dalu, Mesi,
Jambe, Yangla, De, Omara, Bazana, Omara, Bazana, De, Zenden, Juje, Kenra, Vese, Jen, Dalu, Demo, Mimba, Rase, Kada, Denje, Shunlun, Toba, Lode, Babe, Nava, Zendo, Lode, Yazu, Vujun, Pega, Kesan, Pumbe, Chudo, Memba, Demba, Zenla, Wando, Jichobe, Chanyin, Shukun, So, and obeisance to my Guru and protector Manjushri, who holds at his heart a scriptural text, symbolic of his seeing all things as they are, whose intelligence shines forth as the sun, unclouded by delusions or traces of ignorance, who teaches in 60 ways with the loving compassion of Father for his only Son, all creatures caught in the prison of samsara, confused in the darkness of their ignorance, overwhelmed by their suffering, whose Passionate One, with the brilliance of your wisdom, illuminate the darkness enclosing my mind, enlighten my intelligence and wisdom, so that I may gain insight in the Buddha's words and texts. Like the sweet perfume of white lotus, born in the ocean of knowledge, nourishing honeybees, the fortunate being, your fame pervades all directions. You are proficient and powerful in upholding the precious doctrine. To you, all of Santinjing Wangda, respectfully I pray.
Nhất tâm kính lễ Đức Văn Thù Sư Lợi, bậc đại trí Ngài điều phục hai chướng ngại, tự nhật quan lan tỏa khắp mười phương, bậc thực chứng chân nghĩa màu rốt ráo, từ tim Ngài Bát Nhã Kinh thủ hộ nhiệm màu, cõi luân hồi chúng sanh thọ nghiệp báo, bị ngăn che bởi phiền não vô minh, sở hữu 60 pháp âm thủ thắng, cùng đại bi Ngài hóa độ chúng sanh, tựa từ mẫu chăm lo cho quý tử. Tiếng rồng vang Ngài thức tỉnh hữu tình, thoát khỏi vòng luân hồi nghiệp chướng. Gươm trí tuệ Ngài chặt đứt vô minh, tận diệt muôn vàn khổ đau cùng ách nạn. Chừng tử Như Lai tối thắng toàn giác, Ngài an trụ nơi thập địa pháp vân, báu thân Ngài trang nghiêm thanh tịnh, 112 tướng hảo Như Lai. Đê đầu đảnh lễ Đức Văn Thù Sư Lợi, cúi xin Ngài tận diệt ám chướng vô minh. Con khẩn cầu dưới gót sen bậc đại trí, ban pháp lực diệt phiền não vô minh, được trí sáng con thâm nhập nghĩa màu, pháp vi diệu cùng muôn vàn luận giải. Như rượu hương ngọt ngào từ sen trắng, đản xanh nơi trí thủ thắng đại dương, hàng thiện căn như ong mật thọ nương, hồng danh Ngài khắp mười phương quảng bá, đấng thiện xảo uy dũng bảo tồn pháp bảo vô giá. Nam mô Lốp Giang Tenzin Quang Đắc, xin cung kính trì niệm.
Ten yo